Okay, so
Are we recording?
yeah, we're recording.
Or guys,
We're not really. I mean, this is not really lecturing, and it's not really a seminar either. It's something in between. We're kind of reading the text out loud or something like that, in a sense. But
you found it? Okay.
good job.
For your wallet.
We've come to the point in the text where we have, remember that this discussion of science is only a discussion of
How science works on today.
well, it's a discussion of these essential phenomena of the modern period, of which he says science, machine technology, aesthetics, culture, and the loss of the gods. Right. So this is just going deeply into one of those. It's not actually going to go deeply into the other ones here. But it does in other essays. So we're going to return to this question of, for instance, when art becomes aesthetics, which happens in 1750, when somebody discovers the term aesthetics. And aesthetics is feeling, right? Emotion. And aesthetics means that you get rid of emotion. That's when you get tranquilized before an operation. You get anesthetized, right? So aesthetics is related to this feeling. And this it's one of the great arguments that Heidegger makes in relation to art. This is a fundamentally modern apprehension of art, that art's supposed to give us feelings, right? That's supposed to generate this aesthetic experience. It's an emotional experience that we're supposed to have in relation to art. And his point in the art essay is that that's not how art has functioned before modernity. So now we've got got into hi. We've got into the science bit. Oh, right, the science story. We can think of these as different stories. The science story, the machine technology story, the art story, the culture story, and the loss of the gods story. We're not going to do we're going to do a little bit of the loss of the gods in the thing, but it's not going to be a lot. But there's a little of that there. But the machine technology story is the technology essay for next time, right? And the art story is the origin of the work of art. Further on in the course. So we have this fantastic story of science, of what science is, which is corroborated in the philosophy of science, particularly through Kuhn, but also through, what's his name, against method, Feyerabend. And so,
What was that name?
Feyerabend, Paul Feyerabend. He got really famous. He's if you Google him, you're going to see him in front of a huge poster of King Kong, and underneath it it's going to say Paul Feyerabend, and then there's going to be the quote: "King Kong is the greatest modern philosopher." He's a very maverick kind of guy. I'm digressing now, but there's a woman at this university called Cecilia Hansson who actually knew him. Who translated him into Swedish and who actually was a personal friend. And she's got some very interesting gossip. One of the things about Feyerabend was that he was extremely lazy. If he could not do something, he found ways of not doing it. But he's also written this book called Against Method, which is basically an attack on methodology coming from this place, that methodology only does this, and therefore it doesn't really actually grasp the truth. That's a brutal kind of misfiguration of his book, but never mind. The important thing here is that this story of science is not some wacky story told by some wacky guy. It's pretty much at the center of the theory of science now, of the philosophy of science. people realize that this is what science does. It produces a Cartesian relationship where facts can emerge, and these facts are proof of, and then we can say proof of nature, but we can put human biology, human sexuality, you can put anything in, right? The facts will prove, and this hangs together, this thing that the facts prove is then the ground plan that the facts are referred back to. So what it builds up to in the text is to where we come to what we actually did touch upon previously, was this on page 127. I've written here, Descartes begins. This is where he sort of moves into Descartes, and and we got this nature and history become the objects of a representing that explains. Now we have to understand how nature and history become the objects of a representing that explains in relation to the science story. Do you get it? So science explains, right? So nature and history become these objects, and now when we know objects, we know how object is this configuration. The object is actually that which is placed before us as a fact in science, or as something else in something else. Yeah?
But how did in antiquity, they did observation of phenomena, but now we're doing experiments. How does experiments produce an object where mere observation doesn't?
What you're basically asking is, and this is a very good question, you're saying that we began the discussion, the first sentence, metaphysics grounds an age. So if I reformulate your question, you're saying that, okay, so if this is the metaphysics that grounds our age, what was the metaphysics that grounded the, say the pre-Socratic Greeks? They did science. What was that? He's going to explain that in the work of art essay, the origin of the work of art. He's going to talk about how he's basically understanding the history of being. And this is, when I say this, Demas goes mad. He doesn't want me to say this, because what I'm doing now is I'm objectifying in a way that Heidegger would never want to objectify. So I'm making history now, where Heidegger actually doesn't want to make history, because history is one of those disciplines that objectify, right? But if we objectify, if we say, okay, let's say now I'm not a Heideggerian. I'm not trying to get out of this, right? I'm simply using Heidegger to understand myself better. I'm using Heidegger as a Cartesian. Heidegger becomes this new instrument for me to make objective facts. So if I say, okay, that's where I'm standing. Now what happens if I take Heidegger's idea that in every age there's a metaphysics that grounds the age? If I take that as my historiography, if I say, okay, that's going to be the logic with which I'm looking at history. So what is the metaphysics that grounded the Greek age? The pre-Socratics, in other essays, their way of having things reveal themselves to them, Heidegger calls physis. So if we are in Vorstellung, representation, then that's the subject-object mode, right? Then what we can call the ancient Greek, the really, really early Greek, was physis. And then with Plato, you get these representational system. That ground is called poesis. And then we get techne with the Romans. And then we get ens creatum with the medieval scholastics. Then we get subject-object with Descartes. And then in the technology essay, we're going to get something else we don't want to go into right now, which is actually what we're in now. So we get these 5 ages, 5 metaphysical groundings. And physis means that things just appear, and then they disappear. So to the pre-Socratic Greeks, they thought the universe consisted of things that whoosh up. This is Herbert Dreyfus again, he uses the term whoosh up. So stuff just whooshes up and then disappears. And you don't worry about them disappearing. And you don't worry about them whooshing up. So loads of things can whoosh up and disappear. And when you do science, you don't worry about, you saw something then, you don't see it now. It's not going to be a big concern for you, and it's not going to be an anomaly. So it's just like the well that